Recording is started. I'm sorry, Pike, but you were spouting off a lot of interesting stuff for the episode that I felt we should actually have in the episode.
Yeah, I was bringing it up so that maybe you can introduce it, just so everyone knows. What I was specifically talking about is the fact that this episode, Battle Lines, is the last one directed by Mr. Paul Lynch. He was not a regular director for Star Trek, but he did five in TNG, and this is his fifth one on DS9. And we've already gone over all his episodes in TNG besides this. I mean, in DS9 besides this one. But just so you're aware, he did some. So he did A Man Alone, which we like. Babel, which is okay for us. Q-less, which isn't we had our problems with. Passenger, which I believe we liked. I think
Yeah,
we
we
were
liked
at
it.
least
It's
yeah.
a little awkward, but it's fine. It's like it's not. It's
But
one of those. It's skippable, but it's like not bad.
yeah, it's a good episode if you just want some DS9. But in TNG, his first episode, The Naked Now, the one where
The entire crew gets like
Data,
intoxicated, right?
yeah, and Data loses his virginity. And he did 11001001, which has the binards. The unnatural selection, I do not remember that episode at all. A
I'd have to look it
Matter
up.
of Time, which I believe is the episode where, yeah, I remember this episode. It's when the guy comes from the future saying he's a historian, but it turns out
Hmm.
he's a thief. But probably the best one from TNG he did was his last one, which is The First Duty, from season five when Wesley's at the academy and they have that training accident due to a stupid stunt and it kills somebody.
Yeah, that's a
And
pretty good episode.
yeah, yeah, it's probably one of the best episodes of TNG.
Yeah.
Really good Wesley episode. And before anyone says it, I don't care if Wesley's bad. Usually, there can be good Wesley episodes.
No, I mean I think most people say that that's actually one of the really good ones because when it comes to Wesley, a lot of the issues were in the early seasons, which obviously is going to
Hmm.
paint the picture of the character Wesley Crusher.
Hmm.
And generally, by that point in time, they really do sort of start restricting Wesley. But
Hmm.
prior to that, he was very much this like insane prodigy. So
Hmm.
this is a weird thing. Like in Star Trek, kids are a lot smarter, and part of that is probably just like advanced education, advanced all sorts of things. So
The
you've kids
sort of
doing like
Futurama joke of from season one Futurama, where it's like, by today's standards, Ryan, you're just a high school dropout instead of a
yeah.
college dropout.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because but it's just like you see kids doing these like insane like research projects that are just like you know, sort of the joke is they're doing stuff that scientists in our modern day are struggling with, but that's just how far we've
Hmm.
advanced as a species. So, but even then, Wesley was kind of absurd. He was like he had these insanely great ideas and theories. It really felt like a lot of the members of the Enterprise who are supposed to be the best of the best were effectively like limited or restricted in how they're supposed to behave and act, so that Wesley can like shine. And that was always the issue. But in that particular episode that you're referencing, Wesley is the one who kind of makes the mistake.
Yeah.
It's all about Wesley. Essentially, if I recall, it's been a long time since I've seen that episode, but they basically hide the fact that one of his teammates is has like basically the direct result of another person's death, and
The direct cause. Yeah, because he was the leader, he pushed them to take part in that training, that not training
a
exercise, but
dangerous maneuver.
that
Yeah.
particular, yeah, which was just for show to say, which was already banned at the academy because the last time it had been done, it has resulted in a death. And that character actually is basically the prototype for Tom Paris from Voyager, aka Mr. Got drummed out of Starfleet, if I recall. I can't remember why Tom got kicked out, but basically it was because he was a
I
problem.
believe didn't he? No, didn't he join the Maquis?
No, 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 no. So he got kicked out, and then later he joined the Maquis, and he
Yeah. Okay.
as
Okay. So
basically a
yeah, I don't know.
mercenary.
Yeah. I think he. I thought he just.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it. I had thought he sort of quit because he was kind of getting like, or maybe I'm thinking more Balana, who had like issues with. Yeah, I think I'm thinking more Balana, where
hmm,
she was like a brilliant engineer, but she was always treated like a Klingon or something. I can't recall the exact details, but you know, um,
hmm.
we could probably start the episode proper instead of just our meaningless ramblings.
Yeah, the stuff about Paul Lynch and his other episodes. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but how are you doing, Pike?
Um, I love how it's like, oh, we'll start the episode, and then you
Well,
ask
I
me
just
that.
meant like, well,
I'm
like
fine.
we started odd. I always start asking how you are.
Well, yeah, well, I'm fine. I was doing the background research again and making
Yeah,
sure we have that information.
yeah, and I
And
was
I'm
I
kind of looking.
rewatched the.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just mentioning I had just rewatched the episode in preparation for this because the first time we watched it, like well not first the first when we were watching this for the purposes of recording, it's been a while unfortunately, so I had to rewatch it. And I think originally I gave the episode a C. I think I'm bumping that
Mhm.
up to a B with some big sort of caveat issues that we could discuss. But yeah, I'm also good. I've been very busy this week, so
Mhm.
I'm glad we get to sit here and talk about my favorite show. Now,
Mhm. Mhm.
one thing, let's see. Before we start, you mentioned about the guy who wrote this, or one of the, not the guy who wrote this, the guy who got injured. You said,
So I'm talking about the writer.
yeah,
So Paul Lynch is the director, the writer whose name is now slipping away from me. Oh God, oh no, oh no.
just pull
No,
it up.
Evan Summers. Evan Summers. Yeah, I just did. Evan Carlos Summers. This is his first episode for DS9, and he actually got called up a week after he unsuccessfully pitched an episode to the series by Bear to like make this one. Basically. Um this is like a case of they need him to do the rewrite for this because basically it's by Hilary Bader, the story, while the teleplay is by both Evan and Richard Dennis. But yeah, Summers. Interesting things to know about him. He was actually at age 16 rendered a quadriplegic because he jumped into a pool and hit his head. And the reason why that's important is there's a later episode in the series called Melora, I believe is how you say it, where there's a character who has to use a wheelchair unless she's in specific gravity environment, and they actually basically based the wheelchair of that on his own experiences. Like that, basically, it's like, oh, that episode is very much like his story because he did both the story and the teleplay for it. But
Yeah,
yeah, just
that's a
and
nice little detail. A nice, or not. It's not nice that it obviously happened, but it's nice that they sort of respected him and based something in the story off of his experience. I think that's really nice. And I'm
mhm.
not gonna lie, when you first told me this, I didn't hear you say pool. I thought you said bull. So I thought you said he jumped into a bull, and I was like, "Oh my god, what the hell is that? How does that? I don't know how that circumstance comes about." But
I'm
so
sorry, he was a
you,
cowboy beforehand. Like, come on, like you got a
no, no,
problem
we're
with
not we're not gonna make fun of it. But man, I was thinking like, oh man, he got like hit by a bull or something. Like I don't know, like maybe he was on a farm and he got like a bull like kicked him or
yeah.
something. And now when you said pool, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Okay, so I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my god, I completely misheard you the
Once
first time.
again, Hollowix is deaf. Hollowix is deaf.
I mean, that's
100% of
probably
Hollowix
that's
cases lost because he mishears.
yeah, that is
Huh.
probably true. But now we can properly begin the episode, and we are on episode Lucky 13, Battle Lines. And like I said before,
Hmm.
I had given this kind of a C. There's some plot stuff that is a little weird, but for the most part, the character stuff is good, and the plot stuff I think can be kind of squared away. So
Hmm.
we open up with a pretty good and comedic scene where they had O'Brien apparently has found some old encrypted files on the computers from the Cardassians. Nothing major, but it does have some personnel logs of people of note that the Cardassians are keeping track of. And Cisco sort of believes that these records could be studied to better understand how the Cardassians think. And
Hmm.
Kira comes in asking like, "What's going on?" And Cisco's like, "Oh yeah, so we discovered some of these, and by the way, there's a file on you. You may find it disappointing." And she's like, "Oh, I'm a big girl." So then they walk out, and
Hmm.
then then it's mentioned that let's see, Bashir says, by airlock 14, apparently the Kai has arrived. So for some reason, the Kai has
Hmm.
made a surprise visit to the station, and then Kira comes out of the room and she gets mad because she's like, uh, "What exactly is it that she says?" She says,
A
"A
minor
minor."
operative whose activities are limited to running errands for the terrorist leaders?
I,
Just,
I I
yeah,
find this
which,
funny because like I like to fully imagine that because it's questionable how much the Cardassians actually knew of specific guerrilla tactics and how much they kept track of some of those. So it's
Hmm.
firmly possible that that's all they thought of her as, which, given
Hmm.
how young she was when a lot of these things were going down, that's actually very believable that they think, oh, they have this like little girl working for them and she probably just does errands and stuff like that. When in reality, we
Yeah.
know that she was, bombing stuff and shooting people and all the other stuff that the
Yeah,
freedom
but
fighters were doing. But I also like to
unfortunately,
think,
that doesn't.
yeah,
That
because like you wouldn't want to be known for that.
Well, yeah, but there's also the fact like that doesn't check out based on what a certain prefect says later of like the way he talks. Then again, he's also a weirdo,
I mean, it
so
could be
you
that he
know.
knew this and he didn't like write it down, but they have some sort of record of it. It's questionable,
Yeah,
but it's also I like to think of it as it was a last sort of insult to Kira. I
yeah.
like to think Gul Dukat
Uh,
intentionally put this in there and said she's a minor operative just to get her mad if she ever found the
no,
files.
wait, this does make sense because remember, you remember the thing with Kira's mom, right? Of like
I
she,
did think about
eh,
that. I did think about that.
yeah, it could be a case of he so the whole like in his own twisted way like following from what we know later is like it's a protective thing of like
It could be.
oh like
Uh, I mean that's like the third option. I don't know if it's like super. I don't know. It's a bit weird. I think it's really more of a. This is kind of first off. This is really just a joke, but it
hmm
actually does play into the greater themes of this episode. Kira doesn't really like that she's not kind of recognized as, the same kind of fighter as
yeah,
all the other freedom fighters for the Bajorans, and that actually plays a little bit bigger into the episode.
yes it does this because she carries the trauma of being one of those fighters and
Well,
yeah
it's not
yeah
exactly trauma, but yes, there's that too. It's more she sort of still views herself as this fighter when
no it's trauma. Remember what happens later on,
no,
she's like afraid.
trust me, I know what you're saying. I agree with you on that. However, part of the theme is the idea of trying to put down your soldier past,
Mhm,
and for Kira to still view herself as this Bajoran soldier, something that we've encountered smaller examples, or episodes that focus on that previously in the season. This idea that she
mhm.
doesn't really understand. She's kind of part of the leading political party on Bajor. She's part of the provisional government. She's working with the Federation. She's not the freedom fighter anymore.
Mhm.
She's the administration. So
Yeah.
like there's this element of like the rebel has to sort of put her past behind her, and we see that with the greater plot of this episode. And let's see, I can start actually like moving this for more visual aids. I want to see. Yeah, she runs out of the thing and she's just mad that she's called a minor operative. But then we see
Hmm.
the Kai, and this is the second appearance of her, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Her presence is felt after this episode
Technically,
for
yeah,
sure, but
technically third because episode one, I believe she appears in episode 1 and 2. So
because of the it's
two-parter
a
basically.
two-parter.
It's
Yeah.
condensed in other releases, but so this would be the second like full episode that she's releasing because 1 and 2 are generally condensed into one. So
Mhm.
this is like her third episode technically, but we haven't. It is a bit weird because, and this is a spoiler, this is also her last episode, and
Yeah.
obviously like the effects of who she is continue on. However, it's interesting because it feels like this character was meant to be a lot more important, and then things changed, and they had to kind of write her out. I don't know if there's any
Mhm.
details on that on like the wiki, like
I actually do. This was mentioned on the page. Basically, originally they were gonna have the standard sort of red shirt, show up in the episode and get resurrected. But they considered making a new character for that, but it was changed to Kyle Paka as she was considered the most expendable recurring character, and so you already know the character, and you could thus have bigger impact by using her. But there's also the fact of like, oh, this is going to affect Bajor in the near future because you remember how the season ends and the
yes.
ongoing issue. Yeah, season two like the end of the season and season two both not heavily like well. it's not like, oh, every episode is going to be about basically this fallout, but it's very much like, yeah, the Bajoran aspects of the show are going to now be having to deal with the fallout of what happens here
Yeah,
because uh she's the Kai. Think of her as the Pope. Once a Pope dies, you need to replace them, and suddenly you have politicking, and it's like
yeah,
it's in a situation like Bajor where Kyle Paka is a beloved unifying figure. You kind of have to hope that someone who can unify as she does in this trying time takes the mantle too, because it's still basically an emergency situation of like, it's pretty regularly pointed out like, yeah, this could end in civil disaster for Bajor.
absolutely.
And yeah.
And I believe that one thing that's a little, let's see, how do I want to put this? I think it's a very good idea to sort of say this series is taking it a little bit more seriously with the continuity. You have a wide cast of characters that are not always super relevant, but they're sort of there, they're present, they can be essentially killed off and sort of used as emotional, I don't want to say emotional fodder, but essentially that, right? Is how do we make this episode more impactful than just killing off a red shirt, right? So
Hmm.
how do we show consequences for this? Is like, well, you have to kind of have consequences happen from it. You can't just like pretend, oh,
Hmm.
someone died, so it's a big deal. It's like, well, in reality, yes. In a show, if that person doesn't have a name and is only introduced this episode, our emotional investment in them is going to be very minimal. With Kai,
Hmm.
and it's a little bit disappointing because she's very good. The actress is very good. To
Yeah.
kill her off shows a lot of impact, and it has a lot more meaningful impact on Kira because of their relationship. And you see this in this. I think this might be the first time we see Kira and the Kai interact, because I don't think she interacts with
Yeah.
Kira in the first two episodes.
She does not. After this, the only time we see the Kai is basically in visions of Kira, but that's not her.
Yeah, but it's also
That's
it's also not entirely relevant to the point, because what I was actually going to say is I didn't feel that when watching the episode. Both
mm,
president good on both actors. When I was watching them, my first thought was, yeah, these characters do have a history, and then I kind of realized, wait a minute, this is the first time they've interacted. But it's obviously
y-
based on the Bajoran religion. Kira's religion is very important to her. We've seen how that impacts her, and the Kai is obviously incredibly stemmed in the Bajoran
the
faith.
Pope.
So, like, these characters interacting felt entirely natural, and as if I didn't feel like this was the first time these two characters met. And I
Hmm.
think that's just
Because
creates a yeah,
in a
well,
way, like as I keep saying, the Pope thing of like Kira has like they have communicated, but not directly with each other. They have communicated through the faith of like
yeah, and I mean, I would
just
say there's a chance that these characters had interacted with each other technically prior to us seeing it in the series, or maybe they had interacted
mhm.
and we just had not seen it before.
Yeah, the
But
government.
the
Yeah.
the level of writing shows that again, I was sort of tricked. I was watching these two characters and I'm like, yeah, they interacted in episode 1 and 2, and then I look back at episode 1 and 2, and it's like, no, they never share a scene together, and it's just very well done. I immediately felt there was a history between these characters and shared relationship. And one thing that's a little kind of getting back into the episode, the Kai is just kind of walking aimlessly around the station, like marveling at it, because this is the first time she's ever left Bajor.
Yeah.
And she walks over to one of the windows and starts looking outside of it. And Kira's like, "Oh, it's very
Hmm.
interesting you chose this window. This is actually this is the one that faces the wormhole. And unfortunately, you can only see it when a ship's going in and out." And the Kai's like, somewhat disappointing. Let's see. Cisco comments. Let's see. What does he say? Oh, like there's a slight like where Opaka says it's a shame. She then sort of gives like a slight look, and Cisco's like, you know what? We're gonna take the ship out for a lunch and go through the wormhole, and the Kai's gonna join us. And
Yeah.
O'Brien, basically they're uh, they're basically, oh, we're gonna take her on a trip to the wormhole, which I'm gonna have some things about this statement because it's very much in the realm of, isn't it kind of convenient that they just allow this to happen and how dangerous this is? Like you said, this is the Pope. Like,
This is the Dalai Lama, I should say, because it's like the attire they wear is more like Buddhist, but it's the Pope Dalai Lama. Don't just
well, it's
oh
like,
God.
and I could say this. I'm actually going to pull from experience and reveal some things about the HoloX lore here. So I've actually worked alongside the Secret Service for the United States, and trust me when I say the president doesn't get to say where they're going most of the time. Like they could be like,
You've
"I'm
got a
going to be
schedule,
here,"
buddy.
and then and then the Secret Service is like, "Okay, but we're deciding how and when you're going there. And if we decide it's too much of a threat, guess where you're not going." So it's a little funny
There.
yeah, it's a little funny when you think about like, oh, the Secret Service kind of has more power, than the president in small aspects. But that would probably be what it's like for Kaiopaka. She would probably have a full security complement, and they would basically be like, "Yeah, you're not going through the wormhole. We know it would be great, but we would need months of prepping and planning before we consider allowing you through there."
Hmm.
So it's a little funny. And she doesn't even have any like bodyguards. She is just kind of like wandering around next to Kira, which admittedly I don't think she would need bodyguards on the station, considering the Federation's probably there to protect her. But I feel there would still be bodyguards.
Yeah, there
And
should be a Secret
yeah,
Service.
and let's be fair, it's probably still really dangerous to go over to the other side of the wormhole. You don't know a lot of what's there, as evident also by this
Yeah.
episode. So letting her through, like I remember, I think when I was watching this, I was briefly thinking, oh, they're going to shoot like a probe through the wormhole just to activate it, so that the Kai could see it. And I'm like, wait, no, hold on, they bring her through it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really dangerous. Um, Also, they
Yeah.
have a slight scene here where, because Bashir is also in this scene, he's sort of like walking alongside them. Uh, he basically says, "I didn't want to keep you, doctor, from your duties, doctor." And Bashir's like, "Oh, it's a slow day," and it felt like there was a little bit of like a, almost like exacerbated like expression from Cisco. He's like, I guess Bashir's coming, because Bashir kind of invites himself. I also want to
Yeah.
say this: while we know Bashir has a staff of medical personnel, some of whom I'm sure are doctors themselves, I do find it very
Hmm.
odd that like he can just leave the station last minute. Admittedly, it's only going to be probably like you know like a half hour expected trip, right? You go through the wormhole and then you come back, and then that's it. It's like, oh, we're going to show the Kai the wormhole on the other side of the galaxy, and then we're going to come right back.
Hmm.
But just have the head doctor of the station be like, yeah, I can just go. It's a slow day. I'm like, but what if it's not? What if in 10 minutes, like a reactor blows up and suddenly it's all hands on deck? I don't think the
Hmm.
doctor could just leave. You're on call. So yeah,
Yeah. Well,
that's
there's
a
other
little.
medical staff. Like I don't.
I mean, I think a better way to do this would have just been like, Cisco's gonna bring the Kai through the wormhole, but he's like, you know what? I want a doctor with us just in case. Just it would be like it would be a Cisco thing, right? It would be a character thing for Cisco that he's taking extra precautions because the Kai is there, right?
Mhm.
So he actually gets the head doctor. It's like, hey, I know you're not busy, so I want you to join me and the Kai through the wormhole, like just in case if there's a medical emergency or if someone gets a nosebleed, you're there to solve it. Got it? That would have been probably a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Because you could have also had like a little joke where maybe Bashir's in the middle of a project, but Cisco says, "I don't care. You're coming with me." I think that probably would have been better.
Yeah.
But to just sort
Yeah.
of say, "Yeah, this station could do without its doctor," and I'm like, "Yes, again, I'm sure it has other medical personnel, but the way they sort of word it makes it sound like Bashir is on call right now, and he's kind of just leaving the station. Which,
Mhm.
if you're on call as a doctor, guess where you are? You're probably at the
Her.
hospital, or you're within a position where you can get to the hospital quickly."
Yep.
Yeah, and anyway, Uh, so as they're preparing to go, and also I want to point out the Kai has been acting. She's acting a little strange. She's acting very like whimsical and almost like she's like looking at things that like she was looking at the wormhole when she couldn't actually see it. She's sort of saying things in ways that are a little bit suspicious. And when she encounters Bashir to go to the ship, she asks him. Let's see. Uh, first off, she thanks Cisco for indulging her. Uh, and then she mentions, like, oh, like she sees O'Brien, you have a wife and daughter, don't you? And he's like, yeah, I have a little girl. And she's like, yes. And she takes off her necklace, like, would you give this to her for me? And it's just very weird. He's like, I don't, okay, I guess I'm going to give
That
her
is
the
a
necklace.
red flag of like, just like, oh, you're gonna like,
I would have loved a scene, because again, O'Brien's not a Bajoran. Sure, he probably has respect for the Kai, but at the same time, I'd imagine he'd be more in the realm of like, yeah, I don't really buy into this sort of this alien species religion. I'm just gonna go like, and then he like sets the necklace on like a table and just leaves it there. I kind of would have
it's like,
almost preferred
no, no,
that.
no. It's a gift from a major religious figure. It's still like, oh, well, it's still
I know, but
nice. Like you can
it's very
talk
weird. She's
about
like,
it.
well, I'm sorry. If someone walked who I had never met before, religious figure or not, was like, you have a wife and daughter. Give this to your daughter for me. I'd be like, who are you and why do you want to give stuff to my daughter? How do you know I have a daughter? How do you know me? Like if the Pope came up to me, knocked on my door, and
He knocked
says,
on my door and
"You,
said,
you Hollowix, I need you to have this," I'd be like, I don't. And he gives you some sort of weird box. I'm like, uh, I'm,
uh,
I'm gonna like set this box far
it was
away
like
from me, and like I don't know what I'm gonna do with it.
Suddenly, suddenly, some of your writing I've read makes sense of like, huh, like you get given possible magical relic. It's like I'm gonna set this. Like I got like think about this and set it aside for now. It's like no, you take the whimsical item and you make the best of it, Holowix.
What if he gave me?
God,
What if he gave me the Ark of the Covenant in tiny box form?
the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, but if I open it, my face will melt.
Um. Well, that's if
Again,
God
what?
here's.
All I'm just trying to say is this is a kind of a weird scene. She just goes up to O'Brien and is like, "This is for your daughter," and walks away. And O'Brien doesn't even say anything. He's like, he like looks at the necklace oddly, but it's like, okay, thanks. And I
Mm-hmm.
just it's funny. But anyway, then they're in the runabout. They're going through the wormhole. Again, let's see. Cisco says that it'll be the smoothest ride yet. Through the wormhole, we get to see the cool little visual effects of inside the wormhole, which I don't think we've seen since episode 1 or episode 2 rather. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find because like Opaka is basically saying like she's had some sort of vision
she had some sort
recently
of
that she
vision.
feels her fate is like something's going to happen to her in the future. She basically has that as like
Mm-hmm.
a vision, and she knows something's going to happen, which is in part probably why she gives the necklace. Let's see. I want to see like what line she says, and she's just like, oh, one thing she says, I'm glad I got the chance to see it. Uh, and Cisco says, you'll be seeing what the wormhole's worth to Bajor in a few years, and she's like, if that is to be my fate, Commander. And it's like, red flag. Man, are
Mm.
you dying? Are you sick?
Are
Because
you think
you're you're acting pretty sus.
these? This is like major red flags. If anyone ever talks to you viewers like this in real life, immediately is like, okay, okay, this is a problem.
Yeah,
You
and
need.
And
then Kira's like, oh, I should
then
reverse
Kira's like,
course.
"Oh, I see."
The Apocalypse says like, oh, so soon, and they're like, yeah, there's not much to see out here. But then they get some sort of reading. They get some sort of signal that they're basically going to send out a probe to monitor, and then they're going to return to look at the signal later. And the Opaka
Mhm.
kind of convinces them it's like, why not look at it now? And Cisco's like, it's not really that like it's not really a good idea. And she's like, because of my presence, please, I don't get out that often. Can we go check it out? And Cisco agrees to this. Um,
Mm,
which is kind of like, yeah, I don't think he would agree to that. That's where I, as like the commander, would put my foot down. It's like, listen, I understand on your planet you're the Pope, but out here I'm the boss, and we're going home. I'm sorry that you don't like that.
mhm.
I hope it doesn't harm any working relationship we have in the future, but this is a very dangerous place, and you being here is a not a good
Is
thing.
a not a good thing.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
so they follow the signal, and what they end up
And what
finding
they end up
is
finding is
some sort of like it's a planet with tons of like satellites floating around it.
Mhm.
And initially they're like, yeah, apparently one of the satellites is going down, it's breaking, and it's sending out a distress signal, which is what they picked up, which explains why this hasn't been found before. Because they find this signal right after going outside the wormhole. So
Yeah.
considering ships are going back and forth, if this signal had been airing the whole time, people would have found this. But admittedly, they're like, yeah, I guess one of the satellites is breaking and it just happens to be sending out a signal right now, just as these guys go through. It's a little convenient, but it's also kind of the things that kickstarts the plot of the episode. So I'm nodding along, saying this is kind of okay. Uh, and suddenly, all the satellites start attacking them. Their shields go down, and the ship crashes.
Mhm.
Let's see. And when they wake up, everyone's kind of injured. Kira and Bashir look worse for wear. The Kai is not moving. The Kai is dead.
Yep.
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 So she dies. It's actually it's a I was being a little bit flippant with it, but it's actually a very sad scene. Bashir tries to like detect what's going on, see if he can fix it. Apparently, she's suffering from a pulmonary collapse, and Kira's basically yelling, "Stay with us." And Bashir basically has to like sadly say like, "I'm sorry." and Kira starts to pray over her body, and like a lot of good acting from Kira. She's really showing that like she cares about this person. And this is part of why I thought these two had a like more of a relationship, on-screen relationship that we had seen, because like I fully believe, yeah, I understand why you're feeling this way, even though it's like, well, these characters
Mhm.
did just meet like 5 minutes ago. It's like, yeah, but both these characters are pretty well developed enough that I still feel this, right? It'd be like at the start of a movie if you see like someone lose their spouse. It's like you don't need to see the relationship; you know what that means to the person. And here it's sort of
Mhm.
similar, where it's like Kira's faith is very important to her. So to see a religious figure that she puts a lot of value in suddenly die in front of her, it becomes this huge deal. And
Yeah, this is
let's
like
be
the Dalai Lama dying in front of her. It's like, oh no, we gotta
yeah,
find a
and
new one.
I'm not gonna lie, this is all Cisco's fault.
Yep, this is all Cisco. This is you,
Yeah.
Cisco.
So I mean, Cisco would get in a lot of trouble for this, and I mean a ridiculous amount of trouble. Like
Yeah, he.
you're the one who brought her through the wormhole. You decided to investigate this thing here. Like you might be the emissary, my friend, but trust me, the Bajorans are not going to be happy with you. This does kind of get resolved. Suddenly, we see a bunch of people like come up behind them,
Mhm, mhm,
like some
mhm.
soldier-looking guys, and let's see. I'm trying to remember. Let's see. What's his name? It's the guy from Breaking Bad. Um,
Oh, uh,
no,
now you're killing me because.
no, it's oh, see, now I'm forgetting his name too. I'm so bad at this. It's oh, it's Jonathan Banks. Playing Mike. I don't know why I wanted to say
Mhm,
Mac.
mhm.
I want to say Mac for some reason, but Mike. Yeah. So Jonathan Banks. Let's see if we can get like an image of him. Uh,
I can get
yeah,
it right
there he is.
now.
I got it. He has like a little makeup on his head. I'm not gonna lie. Given the fact that DS9 takes place like, or the filming of DS9 is like 20 plus years prior to the airing of Breaking Bad, the fact that he looks
Mhm.
pretty much the same is funny.
He's just younger here. He's
Well, I mean,
like he's clearly.
he has more hair, and like obviously there's makeup on his head. But I'm not gonna lie,
Mhm.
uh, he looks very similar. Like it's not even just younger. I'm like, man, you aged very well in like 20 years to just like sort of stay the same.
Mhm.
Uh, but that being said, uh, we get a scene. I want to see here. Yeah, so apparently they've lost contact with on the space station on DS9. They've lost contact with Cisco, and
Mhm.
apparently the Bajoran government is not happy about that because they knew like
Yeah.
Alpacas people are on subspace to me every 5 minutes asking me where she is. Tell them one of our runabouts found a trace of a warp eddy current. It has to be from their ship. Let's see here. Yeah, Odo's like, look, that's not going to satisfy them. And it's like you have no idea what the kind means to them. When they heard Cisco had taken her into the wormhole, and then he gets interrupted. So I do like this because first off, Odo has more of an experience with uh, the Bajoran people than O'Brien or Dax. So he's very much aware of how they're reacting to this.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
this is a
Well,
big this is a big deal, and they're 3 hours overdue for their report. And it's just one of those things where, again, small character details. Odo knows how the Bajoran people function. He has respect for the Bajoran people. The fact that he's more concerned with how they're going to view this than just finding these people is not more concerned, but he's just as concerned.
yeah.
I think it's decent small character work given the fact that this is kind of a very small scene that you could write out, but it does show Dax and O'Brien basically getting on a runabout to go try and find them.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And then we get to the cave where we meet these soldiers. And one thing I do really like from a character, hold on, let's see, which character is this? I believe his name is Shella. Yeah,
Shella, something
yeah.
like that.
One thing I do find funny is like you're not all the same race. He's actually noting that they're not. They're one of them is a Bajoran, but I do find it funny because you have like uh, an Indian man, a black man, and what would look like a white woman with some weird makeup on her nose. And he's like, yeah, they're not all of the same race. It's like, wouldn't you say species if you really mean that? It's like, to me, it just comes across as like, you're all different colors. It's like, oh, okay, man. Like, I
Yeah,
didn't think you care about that, but whatever.
yeah, that.
Uh,
Yeah, that.
I mean, it's fine. Like an alien race, like that term is used a lot. It's used oddly. I think like modern uses of it have really sort of changed how we look at it in fiction and science fiction and stuff like that. It'd be like calling
Mm-hmm.
an elf or like compared to a human. It's like, well, it's a different race of people. It's like that's true. Um, it would also be probably registered as like a different subspecies if you're trying to get like biological with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, with the with this scene, we learned that apparently there's two groups of people on this planet. They have been fighting for generations. They were they when they ask about like, oh, where are you guys from? Cisco explains, we're from the worm on the other side of the wormhole, and he's like, so you don't know about our planet or the punishment we suffer here. They've basically been sent to this planet because their planet couldn't deal with them always fighting, and as a punishment
Yeah.
and reminder of their civilization going forward into the future, they basically locked these people on this planet and won't allow them to leave. Uh, and then we get a scene
I
where,
forgot about them with like
possibly, yeah. I mean, that's very likely that like they sort of put them there for who knows how long and forgot about them. But to sort of like highlight the premise here, uh, a bunch of like other soldiers come in and start shooting them, killing a bunch of them, but then they start coming back to life. And at the same time,
yeah,
the Kai walks back in. She's also been brought back to life.
this ain't
And
good.
so, now that the picture's kind of been painted, as a punishment to these people and a reminder, they have been put on this planet where there's apparently these microbes in the air that keep them alive, hijack their system when they die, and maintain their metabolic processes. If they die, they come back to life. These satellites prevent anyone
Hmm.
from leaving the planet in any other means or coming to the planet. Basically, they're put in a perpetual hell where they're fighting indefinitely to death. And
Yeah.
it's even kind of explained, like, oh, why do you fight these people? It's like we don't really remember. Was it land? Was it some other thing? We don't know, but we're fighting still because we hate them. Like they're terrible people. And one thing I do like is there's a scene where uh, Cisco asks them if they can form a truce, and he's like, "Why would we want to make a truce with those like evil, vile people who have no respect for life?" It's like, well, they think the same about you. It's like, yeah, they probably do. Like this acknowledgement of like, yeah, my opinion is definitely biased. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But so these
It's
people are
like
constantly fighting.
if I see the objective like point of view, it's like even if I do, it doesn't matter. We're still like it's still going to violence is
Yeah,
still like before you can get them to accept the logic, oh, violence will start up again. It's like, yep,
yeah, and
yep.
then the Kai is back. She's been brought back to life. Kira's super happy, and
Well,
I mean, there does raise a question of: is it really you, or is it your flesh being puppeted by nano machines?
so assuming the brains, so I would say generally speaking, it's the cells that the brain cells that make up the memories are what we're going to count here, and by that logic is like yes, that's still you. Um, because because this isn't like teleportation where it's like yeah, the actual molecules are just gone and have to be reassembled and such. Uh, it yeah,
Well, I
this
get here's the thing. I wouldn't normally be bringing this up because you're right. The transporters are the same thing where it's like, are you the same person? Like, did like? But I guess the reason I kind of want to bring it up here is with the Bajorans. Oh, damn it! I'm getting all this feedback.
mhm.
That's like
I'm
just
sorry.
no. It's just
I ha
do like push to talk or something. That would probably be the best.
Okay, okay. Give me a second. Give me a
No
second. Where's my
problem.
push? Uh,
Let's see. Okay, sounds like it's a little bit better now. But with the
yep.
with this like because you have the Kai here, a spiritual leader for their people. There does seem to be a magical element to the Bajoran faith that we've kind of seen, and as a result, it's like, man, how does the religious person view them? That they died, they were dead for a good while, and now they're back controlled by machines. Like, is there not an
It's a
element of
miracle.
yeah? I
Yeah,
guess.
it's a miracle.
I mean, I guess I would just think like, do you not have any questions about like, did my soul leave me and I'm now being like puppeted around as a soulless monster? That's a different question that the series doesn't address, but I do find it like I felt like it would have been something that you could have addressed. And so yeah, we know that these people are constantly fighting and they're constantly killing each other. And Kira actually briefly like steps up and she kind of like is mad at them. It's like, well, of course they attacked us. You don't have any guards standing at the the entrance of your cave. You're not doing patrols. You don't have better battle plans. And you know, like the character got Shala. He's like, why even bother with all that stuff? If we get shot, we die. Who cares? Right? Like, there's no need for
Yeah,
strategy and
like
battle
it's
plan when
just
it's just hail marys all the time.
yeah, it's a bit similar to I've told you about sort of the history of the Scottish borderlands, right? And just how brutal and endemic
Yeah.
violence was there for the longest time.
Hmm.
They basically have a similar like fatalistic outlook upon it of like, what's the point? Point of, I'm going to die anyways. Like, before anyone asks what do I mean by the Scottish borderlands, for the longest time, England and Scotland, hated each other, and the particular borderland, like
As if they
basically
still don't.
around like well, yes, but I mean when they were actively like taking swords and axes to each other, hollowicks and spears, okay?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for the longest time that like a lot of like the fatalism you see in like for lack of a better word, hillbilly redneck culture comes from that because basically that culture was carried on to us here. Like just like yeah, a lot of the stupid stuff here only makes sense if you grew up in that culture and that culture came from there. Where again, when you're gonna die anyways, what's the point of taking precautions slash like being worried about protecting yourself? You're going like you just want to make the other side suffer as much as possible
Yep.
until you die. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's it's obviously a very nihilistic thing, but then the Kai sort of jumps in, and she's like, "Kira, you need to stop." She basically is like, Kira's basically going full soldier mode. She's going full like, "I'm going to teach you guys how to fight so you can properly defend yourselves." And the Kai is kind of like a little shocked and a little like, you know, very much like uncomfortable with the fact that Kira's basically trying to push all these people to be better at killing uh, people.
She's ready for it, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, I thought, is this what you are, basically? Like, you're always ready for violence, and she doesn't mean to judge here. She's just making the observation
yeah.
about it.
And then they have there's like two more parts of the scene, or rather like generally of the scene. So Bashir keeps bringing up that these microbes have have sufficiently altered these people and the Kai. So he's kind of like, there's something going on with these. I need to do more research and tests, but he's obviously limited in the technology he has. And Cisco mentions that like, oh, my people are going to come and pick us up soon. We're not going to be here for years like you guys are. And he basically like, you have I keep missing his name. Shelah. He's basically saying, yeah, if you're going to leave here, I guess you're not going to have to suffer the torment that we live every day. And Cisco says, like, look, I'd be willing to, transport you and the other group of people off this planet and settle you on different planets. Uh, so suddenly they're given this like little fraction of hope. This idea that like we could definitely like escape this torment. And Cisco basically says, but you would need to make some sort of like cooperation with the other the other group. Like you have to work with them. And basically
Yeah,
saying
that's not
like,
gonna happen, Chief.
well, originally he says like, he's against it, but Cisco pressures him. He's like, all right, I'll give it a try. Like worst case scenario, they shoot you when you go there with a messenger. So it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. Um, Although that does raise kind of a question. If you're fighting these people and you really want to kill them, like when you kill them and you know their body is going to be brought back to life, why don't you just do something with the body? Like, I don't know, like, oh yeah, we're going to bury you with rocks. So even if you wake up after the microbes, you're buried under rocks. I don't
Yeah,
know.
give him the oh, who was it in Naruto who got that treatment?
Hidan.
Blood Boy. Yeah, Hidan.
Yeah.
It might be a case of even if they thought of it, it's not practical given the time it takes to revive.
I'm not sure. I guess you'd have
Like
to defeat all of their people, but I guess like the issue I more have is like you could definitely win this battle against immortal enemies if you had good strategy. So if you basically were just like, yeah, we're gonna kill one of your people, and then we're gonna like bring them out to some sort of weird, far off like quarry or desert that this entire planet seems to be, then we're gonna bury them underground so far. that even if they wake up, they're not going to be able to move. Uh,
Everyone be aware, these war criminal-esque statements we make, we're just speaking in hypotheticals. Just so you're aware. It's just
what
hypothetical.
was it? There was some story I remember a friend told me that they were reading, and basically the idea was like there's this like group of immortal people who have basically started this like organization and they rule it. They lived for hundreds of years at that point. Kind of vampire-esque, but obviously not like vampires where they die in the sun. And one of the things they did in that, it was actually horrible. Where it's like, yeah, to like properly like remove each other and get rid of each other if they become a problem, you basically put them in like this giant barrel, fill it with cement, and drop it at the bottom of the ocean with them in it. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're alive. Have fun. Like, it's yeah, it's actually like horrible and torturous. But it's like, look, you can win this. But the episode is basically like, look, don't you see them killing each other constantly? It's so bad. I'm like, yeah, but like they're really bad at it.
My God. That like whole detached, like, yeah, you're just bad at it. But here's the
Look,
thing though,
that'd be
with the
funny if
story
you.
you just told me, wouldn't there wouldn't the under the sea in all that pressure, wouldn't the barrel and the like cement well then you're trapped at the bottom of the ocean because you're being crushed by the pressure of the ocean. But still,
Well, it wouldn't be like so. There's no air like in it essentially, and like it's not like. Look, I don't know enough of the details, but the idea is like, look, this is a permanent way to get rid of you, and it's actually like torturous to the point where if you did manage to escape in like 1,000 years, you'd have gone insane.
got that cars treatment. Cars.
Yeah, basically. And uh, then we cut over to a scene where Kira and the Kai are having a conversation, and Kira is like, "Look, um, let's see. I'm trying to find out where in the transcript it is. Like, oh, Opaka asks, do you recognize yourself in these people? She's like, me, not at all. They're content to die. I always fought to stay alive, and I don't want you to have the wrong impression of me. Because Kira's basically being very self-conscious here. The Kai is very much like a woman of peace, a woman of faith, and Kira had to become a pretty terrible person. Not a terrible, like she had to become a terrible person to fight against the Cardassians.
He had to do
Uh,
awful things to survive,
yes,
to survive and win.
and Kira's very like, oh, I don't want you to think about that way of me. I've tried to move past, and the Apaka's like, look, there's a violence inside you. Only when you accept it can you move beyond it, which is really just the definition of Kira's entire character arc throughout the series. So you could really kind of say this is the like we've had smaller moments where she's had to deal with these things, but this is probably like the big decision moment where she's been, at this point she basically says, yeah, I have to move on. Like it's not just like, oh, I have this conflict inside me. It's like, no, you have to resolve it, and that's what kind of the Kai pushes her on. Uh, and one thing I do like, they have a nice little line here. Kira says, I've known nothing but violence since I was a child. And the Apocalypse says, in the eyes of the prophets, we are all children. And Bajor has much to learn for peace. And I do kind of like that because even just ignoring the faith aspect of it, this is really the Kai saying, like, it's never too late to change. Like, if all you've known is violence since you were a child, in the eyes of the prophets, you're still a child, so you still have all this room to grow and change as a person. So I
You
think
can
it's good.
always receive forgiveness as well. Like it's
Yeah. I
very
mean, it's not so much like forgiveness she's saying, but you could sort of interpret that. It's more just this idea of like it's never too late. A lot of people might think like once you're an adult, who you are is kind of set in stone. Which I know there's like some psychological studies that kind of say yeah, a lot of things
yeah.
by the time you're an adult are that's who you are because that's just how your brain is now sort of wired. But at least in terms of like this moral advice and this like religious advice, she is saying like you're never like they're we are so small in the scope of the universe that there's no reason we can't change who we are, sort of deal. It's like none of us are so fundamental and stuck in who we are that we can't alter like a fundamental core aspect of ourselves. And Kira does ask, you're right, Kira does ask, like, I don't know if the prophets will ever forgive me. And Opaka says they're just waiting for you to forgive yourself. So, really nice scene. And then you have to sort of sit back and kind of remember the prophets almost have no idea about what Bajorans are.
Listen, no, it goes back and forth. They're just not used to them actually like, oh, coming to have a conversation. Okay, okay, that's the issue.
I know, but it's funny because they're obviously very protective of Bajor. We see that throughout the series, but they also don't really understand linear time. So it's kind of just like, yeah, we think this planet over here with these weird little ridge nose aliens, they're kind of neat. And then meanwhile, it's like,
And
and then meanwhile you have Kira being like, "Will the prophets ever forgive me?" I'm like, they don't know who you are. I just it's funny. It's funny to me. I mean, you can kind of probably interpret a lot of interesting things about like faith and religion. The idea of like, we're ants and like the view of like much more powerful entities and much more godlike entities. But I think it's I think it's still pretty good. I think it's a nice little scene between the Kai and Kira. Um, let's see, and then we sort of switch to the Rio Grande with Dax and O'Brien. Let's see. So they're basically trying to figure out where this system went. Apparently, the star basically in this binary system makes it so they can't properly detect and scan these planets. And there's a ton of moons and a ton of planets, so it's going to take a while for them to search them all. Let's see
nice
here.
one, Cisco. Nice one.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
really
again,
put us in a bad situation.
this is one of those things that I find a little weird because, first off, like like just as Cisco and his team were going through the wormhole, they've detected this satellite which brings them to this planet. But after they arrive, that satellite's been destroyed, so it's no longer sending out a signal. So now it's impossible to find the planet. It's kind of like I guess this is convenient. Like it's kind of just one of those things where technology says it's this way, so that's what the way it is. Accept it and move on. But it's kind of weird.
Plot. Plot.
Yep. Yep. Let's see. So they managed to negotiate a ceasefire, and we meet the leader of the other group, the Zelenko. God, these weird names. Who doesn't seem super convinced. That like, oh, why did these aliens? Why did they side with you? Why did you shoot at our people? And it's like we didn't side with either ones. Cisco says. Let's see. I'm trying to like see because there's a line. Oh yeah, and then like Zelenko keeps saying more and more things that are like, yes, you're very clearly not willing to you're very clearly not willing to accept peace, to the point where even when they're told,
Not
oh,
bad.
we can be brought to different planets and we can do things our own way, Shella basically says, did you think I would actually let a single Null escape this moon alive? And then they go to fight again.
Got that Mugabe in him. Got that
Well,
Mugabe in him.
they're very much just like, yeah, we're not going to cooperate no matter what. It's over. GG. Like we're going to continue to kill each other, and that's just the way things are going to be. And then of course, they all get like shot, die, and they come back to life. However, Bashir at one point tackles Cisco. I was trying to find the scene particularly. It's hard to find the scene. I think I lost it. It's hard to find the scene particularly. But Bashir tackles Commander and says, look, I've discovered we can't afford to die here, not even once. And this is where we learn that once your body is infected with the nanites, or the microbes, and once they're maintaining you, you can't survive without them. And they only function on this planet.
Yep.
So basically, this is the understanding. Cisco says, look, the Kai is stuck here. And then let's see. I want to try and find that one line that is just the most hilarious line in all of Star Trek. Where is it? I gotta try and find it. It's the greatest line because it happens with Dax and O'Brien. Oh yeah, here it is. So Dax and O'Brien are trying to figure out how can we scan these planets faster and figure out which one they're on. And they're like, look, it's not possible to do this. And O'Brien's like, let's see. Runabout hulls are made out of a metallic composite that interacts with magnetic fields. We could send out a few probes to scan the system in those specific magnetic resonance patterns. If Cisco's runabouts in the system, we might be able to pick up a fluctuation in the hysteresis curve. Again, a lot of sci-fi gobbledygook, a lot of
Space.
techno babble.
Yeah, babble. It's
What
just babble to justify it.
this is where it's phenomenal. Where Dax is like, the probes would never be able to detect it. And O'Brien's like, they will if I can outfit them with a differential magnometer. And Dax is like, I've never heard of a differential magnometer. How does it work? And O'Brien says, I'll let you know as soon as I finished making one. It's just it's the final acceptance that like, yeah, the technology in Star Trek doesn't function, guys. There's a few times in DS9 they do this, where at one point like Kira, there's one episode I can't recall what it is, but Kira basically like spouts off some technobabble in this long chain of all the characters spouting off technobabble, and she stops for a second and says, "What did I just say?" Like it's this full
Yeah.
acknowledgement of like we don't know what's going on here anymore. And here you're like Bashir's like, "Look, I just have to invent a device that doesn't exist, and then we'll be able to solve the problem." This
Which is
is
fine because O'Brien is the greatest greatest engineer in all of Starfleet, indeed, in all of the Milky Way. It's just how it is.
look, I agree with you. If anyone would be able to do it, it would be O'Brien. At the same time, like this is some major bullshit. I think we can firmly agree that like this is you created a problem. Oh no, we can't find this planet. If only we had some way to find this planet. And then we said, oh yeah, by the way, we can just invent something to find the planet right off the top of our head, and we don't even know. Like we have to make up science to do this. It's such bullshit. Um,
It's fine.
like
It's
it's hilarious. It's
fine.
it's quite literally the most telling line of all of Star Trek that like don't worry about the technology stuff, guys. It's never gonna really make sense. It's never gonna matter. Uh, but you could have written the scene to not have this be the circumstance, right? You could have just had it be that oh no, we need to do something to find this, and O'Brien has a good idea because the analogy he kind of explains is like to find a needle in a haystack, you need a magnet, and it's like okay, so if you look for the specific like I don't know the isotope or whatever that's used in the runabout hulls, you can detect it. That could be something that they discovered to do, but it's such bullshit. It's like that one episode with the
It's wrong.
well, it's like with the passenger, right? Where they make the point that like this one guy has learned how to hack any system by basically finding non-essential non-essential like computers and hacking into other parts from them. So he uses like the lighting on one deck to get inside a station's main computer, and it's like that's something that shouldn't exist in your setting. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's basically like how it often ends up now.
well, I mean, sure, it's just one of those things where like if this was something that people could do because the issue with that particular scene right is uh like Kira comes to the conclusion very quickly what's happening, and I'm like wait a minute, if you were able to realize what was happening that quickly, someone in the galaxy should have seen this problem ahead of time. And even then it's like look, we don't need to get into that argument again. We discussed that with that episode, but let's just say not the technology is bullshit in Star Trek and move on because that's what this scene is basically saying. It's like, look, all this technology stuff facilitates the character stuff, so we want to talk about the character stuff. Ignore the technology stuff.
Yeah, but I'm gonna complain about it.
I mean,
So are
again,
you.
I find it funny because it's a funny line. It's a funny line. It's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing yet, so I'm gonna figure out a solution. And let's see the scene after that. Uh, let's see. This is where they sort of realize that, like, yeah, the Kai can't leave. And Kira's basically mentioning it's like, look, our people would not have survived if it was not for the faith and not for you. Uh, let's see. And this is also where Bashir tells Cisco the proper details relating to this is why like these people will never be able to leave. Our promise of escorting them off this planet will not work. Um, the Kai basically gives some last minute advice to Kira, saying like, let's see if I could find the particular line. Um, yeah, she says like, look, I didn't know how or why, but when I came to this wormhole, I knew I wouldn't be returning. You must tell our people, Kira, that I have answered the call of the prophets. I was brought here because it is time for these people to begin their healing process, just as you were brought here to begin yours. So, she sort of gives Kira that last minute advice, and I guess that line does kind of solve some of the guilt that the Bajorans might place on Cisco, but I don't believe a lot of them would believe that.
Yeah, I get the idea she's going for, but like she knows that she's always been like basically the comforting, almost mother figure, like giving them hope and such. But to yourself is saying like they need to move on from me. They need to now not develop, but basically like be ready to go on their own
Yeah,
and go beyond just recovering. Instead,
yeah,
be
it's like, yeah,
heal.
the training wheels are gone. So yeah, I mean, like the training wheels are gone, and I think it's also she's staying there because she sees that she could help these people who are suffering from a similar war torn nature. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
they can't leave the planet, uh, and neither can she. So she's kind of like, I'm going to help these people, but I'm just going to say this: if you go back through the wormhole and the Bajoran like diplomats ask you, "Hey, so where's the Kai?" You'd be like, "Oh, well, she stayed on this one planet, and she told us that this is where she belongs now. Have a good day." Those diplomats are like, "Huh, we're going to go to that planet, and we're going to see what's up with that, because you just told us our Kai just stays there now. That's no, we're going to check up on her." And of course, this is where they learned that she would, if they'd managed to get to the planet, they would learn that she died on the planet and that Cisco's at fault. And yeah, like this is bad for the Federation, but that's kind of ignored in this episode, unfortunately. Uh,
It's fine.
yeah, yeah. Let's see. Oh, uh, oh no. Let's see. Bashir does mention that while it is against what he sort of views as a doctor, he does believe that he could, end these people's torments by disabling the microbes. Let's see. He says anything that can be programmed can be reprogrammed. I could disable the mechanism of the microbes. They should no longer function with someone when someone is killed, and these people will finally be able to die. And then Sheila's like, you've seen our life here. Please, it's the only solution left. Give us a way to reprogram these microbes. It'll put an end to this war. And for a second, you're probably sitting there thinking like, oh, so you just like really want to accept death and die, uh, and then uh, Sheila says, no, but it will allow us to finally win. We'll be able to wipe them out for good. We'll disable their microbes, and then they can't kill us, and we can kill them. It's the ultimate weapon. And
Ah, war crimes. Don't you
yeah,
love
and
it?
meanwhile, Cisco's like on the phone with O'Brien. He's managed to poke a hole through the satellite array. There was some technobabble involving that as well. And Cisco basically says, like, after telling them that they're not taking them off the planet and saying like, look, we're not going to reprogram the microbes to use as a weapon, he kind of gives them this look and like, because he tells O'Brien, okay, only three to beam up, which obviously Dax and O'Brien are a little concerned about because the Kai's supposed to be there. But then they sort of like walk. Like, let me see if I can find the exact like scene that this is kind of happening in. I've done a very good job, very terrible job at getting visual aids here, but with they kind of like walk over into the corner, and they just sort of like watch Sheila, uh, and Sheila's kind of like yelling at them. Let's see, uh, like you can't leave without giving us the you can't leave without taking us. You can't leave without giving us the weapon to defeat these people. And Cisco's like just basically saying energize when ready, and looks to the Kai and says, Opak, if we could find a way out of here. And she says, nope, my work here is now, Commander, but your path and mine will cross again. And then they get transported out. Now it's a very awkward scene because it's very slow, but if I was Sheila and I was like, hey, these people have a weapon to get us, to help us win this war finally, and they're not really talking to you because Cisco's very quiet in the scene, and they walk over into the corner and they're talking about transporting out. If I was Sheila, I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna like shoot you. Like, he kind of just sits there and like watches them leave and doesn't do anything about it. But then there's like an explosion in the distance,
Yeah,
and
but
they realize the fighting's picked up again, so he goes to run towards that instead.
it's just a case of like, oh, well, if you shoot them, then there's no way of even doing like it. And then it's like, okay, like, and then they might go to the other side and help them instead. It's like, yeah, don't play the game of
I
turn
mean,
like
yeah, I get what
like
you're saying.
shooting them
It's
would
just
just make them the enemy, and they'll go to the other side and do exactly what you wanted them to do, but for their side instead. And now you're going to be wiped out. It's like it would not work out the like it just means you're going to be wiped out. And sure, now you're dead and you don't have to deal with it, but it's like no, you wanted to make the other side suffer. Instead, you've given them the key to killing you and just wiping you out. Like
I see what you're saying, but it's like so this weird group of aliens comes to your planet where you're fighting this endless war. They say they can transport you off here, and then it's revealed they can't. They say they can disable the microbes, but then it's revealed they won't because you want to use it as a weapon. Um, and then they're awkwardly going to stand in the corner talking about transporting away. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not letting you leave. And I get what you're saying, where it's like if you fight them, this might prove worse in the future for you. But kind of the way they characterize Shella is like he seems very much like he doesn't care about that sort of thing. Like you said, these guys are sort of beaten and broken, and they're basically just mindless killing machines at this point. To the point
No, no,
where,
no, no, no. See, so he was at least willing to hear out the possibility.
oh no 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 no, the episode
He
says he was not because remember, Cisco says neither side took it seriously, took the meeting seriously. Like Sheila basically very quickly, at the snap of a dime, says, "I will not work with these scum," and it's a little weird. It's not done poorly, but the way it's presented is Sheila's like, "Look, I will meet with these people. We will come to some sort of agreement." And then during the agreement, like originally Sheila is like just kind of being insulting but not outright hostile. Meanwhile, the other leaders being hostile, and then eventually Sheila is just like, "Yeah, no. Do you think I was ever gonna let one of you guys leave this planet alive?" Like the way it's worded is he never really planned on working with them. It was always ever just some sort of like, I'm just trying to figure out this situation and I'm going to act in a way that's, befitting of me. It's a little like that. So I don't know. It's not amazing. And I felt like if I was to see the one people like because they've been fighting here for who knows how long, and if you saw the only group of people who ever showed any sort of possibility of ending the war either in total or for your side show up, it's like I'm not letting you leave. I'm gonna fire a gun at you. Like that's just me. And like the way they present it is the only reason he kind of like gives up on this is they hear an explosion in the distance. He gets distracted by it because he knows there's more fighting, and he's so gun ho to kill the other side that he runs towards the fighting instead of dealing with the Federation people.
Yeah, so well in that case, if it's like okay, it's like if you're in his case, like this exact case, like no offense, Hollis, but you would be do exactly like him. Like it's like
I mean,
like
I get it, right? They show this idea that he and his people have become so battle hungry and their hatred has festered so much that they don't really think logically, right? If because quite literally, like there's a like if there was like better logical reasoning for them, they very easily would have like gathered together and been like, guys, can we just stop killing each other and just like we'll each take half our planet and survive that way? But they don't do that because they're so filled with hatred. And the idea is that's supposed to mirror what Kira's kind of like. Is she still has this soldier mentality that she kind of needs to move past and heal from? Meanwhile, these people, they're so
yeah.
far gone, they're not even entertaining the idea of healing. But I guess it's just like once he kind
Yeah.
of realizes like Bashir is probably the only person who could reprogram the microbes. It's like I'm not gonna lie, I feel like the Wartron guy would be like, yeah, I'm not gonna let you leave. I'm gonna shoot all of you except for Bashir, and then I'm gonna like make him kill all three of them so they can't leave the planet, and then Bashir will have to like work for you, right? But yeah, I guess he could in theory work for the other side. Like it's a little janky. I don't think it's entirely that bad. It's kind of why I think I originally gave this episode a C. There's a lot of weird jank, but there's a good amount of character work here. A lot of good stuff from the Kai, a lot of good stuff from Kira, and not gonna lie, some good stuff from Bashir. I was actually looking at this one scene where, like, again, Bashir is offering this solution to like put everyone out of their misery, and then Shalel is basically like, "Yeah, I can turn it into a weapon." There's this look. I'm trying to see if I can get it again because I had it for a second. There's this look Bashir gives him right there, where he is just like absolutely like floored that this man is so willing to kill. Like, let's see if I can like it's at let's see what's the time frame of it. It's at like 42:12 if you have it pulled up in front of you.
Mhm.
But it's just
I
this
don't
small
have
look that well, it's just this small look Bashir gives that it's just so like he's like flabbergasted. Like I gave you a solution and all you want to do is use this to kill people. No. So good acting from Bashir, good acting from Kira, Kai. Um, if I had to say, like Cisco's kind of the worst character in this episode, not acting wise, but just
decision wise
yeah.
of
And
like
there's
writing.
there's there's a there's one scene. Let's see if I can find it. There's one scene where I think he acts a little out of character because he admonishes Bashir for something that I feel like he shouldn't be admonishing Bashir for, at least as harshly. Let's see. So uh, at one point when Cisco mentions, I wanted to bring this up before I forgot, but when Cisco mentions, okay, we're going to be trying to transport these people off the planet, uh, Bashir kind of references like, isn't that kind of like assisting a jailbreak? Because they're put here as like a punishment. And Cisco kind of flips out at him. Let's see if I can find it in the. I want to see if I can find it uh, on the thing in the let's see, hold on. Let me just look up jailbreak in the script. Yeah, Cisco says, "I don't need you to interpret the Prime Directive for me, Doctor," and he says it very harshly. And Bashir like is immediately curtailed. He's like, "Yeah, look, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course, I only meant." And then Cisco again interrupts him. They've paid for their crimes hundreds of times over. They've been altered somehow and have been abandoned by their world. I believe the Federation would recognize them as separate and unique. And Bashir is like, "Yes, sir. I should be checking on that analysis." And he walks away because it's very weird. I don't think it's an unreasonable thing for Bashir to ask Cisco of that. It's like, do you not view this as a possible violation of the Prime Directive, something that's very nebulous to begin with? And Cisco kind of just jumps down his throat at it, which is a little odd. That's probably the worst character thing from Cisco when you ignore plot writing that just sort of has him act stupid. But yeah.
He- I, I don't know. Like, sure, he jumps down his throat, but it's one of those things like I kind of get it. Of like, would you rather I leave them here in this just
Oh,
awful
I
fucking
100%
situation?
no, I 100% agree with you. It's just the way he says it, right? Like, when you look at like a lot of the best scenes in Star Trek, both TNG and DS9, and a little bit of the original series, although not as much because they don't use a lot of the characters as much for that. Some of the scenes that are the best are when all the characters sort of gather around a table and discuss their possible outcomes. You'll have Picard, say this is what our problem is. You'll have Riker propose a solution. You'll have Worf propose a solution. You'll have Data. Here you have the same thing where Cisco will ask a question. Kira, Bashir, Dex, Odo, they'll all present possible opportunities, generally based in their character, right? This is what this character believes a solution should be. And here, it's like, this kind of feels like Bashir's just raising the idea that, like, sir, isn't this kind of like a jailbreak? Like, would this be a violation of the Prime Directive? And Cisco just immediately jumps down his throat. So it's not the content of what Cisco says that's kind of my concern. It's more how he goes about it. It's more like,
He's much like this is something that always comes up with like remember later on when Warp questions an order silently and like Cisco's like very much affirms it in an aggressive fashion like just like the
yeah,
order has been given. But like Cisco is not someone Cisco gets the job done and he expects you to go along with it to get it done. Now, generally speaking, Cisco's in the right in whatever circumstance. Like I would say the later one because the situation I'm referring to is with the Maquis and he just told Worf like like prepare those torpedoes and it's like
yeah. I
oh
know what you're referencing.
like
I guess like my concern here, and I will agree with you, when like when your commander's like, look, we're transporting these people off planet. If your then next response is, are you sure? It's like I agree that that is like questioning a superior officer. I guess the issue I have a little bit more with here is this seems out of nowhere. Like if you had one other instance prior to this where Bashir was questioning Cisco's actions and then Cisco jumped down his throat in the second instance, I'd be like,
no, no,
okay,
no, no, no.
that's fair.
This isn't just Bashir. This is how Cisco is, and he does not take being questioned. Remember,
No,
when a
I know what you're
certain
saying, but
Major Kira, uh, went over his head to Starfleet, and he said, like, if you ever do that again, I will have your head. You will be off the station. Like, he does not broach this, and he will be very aggressive. It's not just Bashir. It
I
is.
agree with you on that. But I think that you just proved my point because that was after an entire episode in like two episodes like that is episode 3, I believe. So you had Kira acting somewhat insubordinate for 2 episodes prior to that. She was not working with Cisco in episode 1 and 2. She was working with him, but very limitedly. She was questioning him. She was like, the Federation doesn't belong here. You don't care. I don't trust you. And then, when she questions his orders and isn't happy with that result, then she goes over his head. And that's the second time in that episode 3, she goes over his head like twice. The first time she questions an order, and then she agrees to the order when Cisco pushes the point. Then she goes over his head, and then he questions her on going over his head. So that's the second instance in that episode where she's acting a bit insubordinate. And that's when he acts, like the motherfucking Cisco, where he lays down the law. Here, this feels out of. I'm not gonna lie. Like this, if anyone were to watch the episode, they'd be like, this feels a little out of nowhere. Like because like citing the conversation up until this point, right? Is you have Bashir walking out of the runabout that they were using. He says, "All right, I got the computer up more or less. It's processing the data now. I've already confirmed that these microbes are artificial, rather like nanites in a way. I should have a complete analysis of the computer in a few minutes. What's going on?" And then Cisco says, "Talks of a ceasefire." And Bashir says, "No kidding. How'd you arrange that? Because that was something that was previously considered off the table." And Cisco says, "I told them we would transport them off this moon." And Cisco says, "Isn't that a bit like assisting a jailbreak?" And then Cisco jumps down his throat, and I'm like, "Whoa, hold on. Like you were having like a friendly back and forth, where you're having just a conversation, and suddenly it's like, don't question me." It's like, oh, okay. Like I guess maybe we have just different interpretations of the scene. I feel like the acting, like I said, the dialogue and what is being said, I am perfectly behind, and I agree with your interpretation of how Cisco is. But I feel like it's always like if you question his order once, like that's like the one time you get it. The second time you do it, that's when he lays down the law. Whereas here, it feels like they just went straight for it. Like, and I wouldn't even say like what Bashir is asking is like unreasonable. He's like, well, isn't that kind of like he's not saying you shouldn't be doing this or that I disagree with this point, this direction of where we're going. He's simply saying like, isn't that kind of like this, sir? And then Cisco says, don't interpret the prime directive for me. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I was just trying to clarify something, but all right. I don't know. That's just kind of how I view it. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to mention about this episode? Because like, going back over it, I'm definitely leaning a little bit more towards like a B minus. It's fine. It's like I think it's a
It's a
I don't
B
it's
for me.
yeah, it's definitely not skippable. This is a very important episode, and I think you're 100% right. This episode informs a lot of what comes after this. Let me see here. I wanted to
Honestly, this no. So you know how you were talking about how like Cisco should get more shit about this? Yeah, the first like I think this informs like we could say in a way this might inform uh a miss oh what's the title they use for like not a Kai but someone who's uh like a priest like because like oh crap you know
I
Barai
know he
what's his title usually
um
what's his title
Vedic.
Vedic. Okay, so Vedic Win. This might inform part of like why Vedic Win. I think we both agree does not like Cisco going forward at it
Oh,
from the
100,
start.
100. Well, so
Yeah, and
I would
then
say
later,
maybe because she also has issues just towards the Federation in general, but that might be something that
we-
developed because of this scene. Yes.
yeah, and then there's the fact of like, yeah, why does the situation on Bajor, beyond just losing Opaka, like why does it go down the drain so quick for the Federation in particular? It's like, well, there's probably like nationalist elements who say like, yeah, Opaka was taken from us by the Federation because, like you remember what the second season starts with, right?
Oh,
Do you remember?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So more than likely, that's why people are so quick to like go with like, well, not everyone, but it's like, why it finds such support, even probably amongst the common
Yeah.
people to
I
some
guess.
degree. It's like,
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think my concern is a little bit more in the realm of when I say I feel like there should be bigger backlash for what Cisco did. Uh, like I'm literally sitting here thinking like, are we looking at like a possible court martial? Like,
oh
are we
yeah,
looking?
there needs to be a court martial here,
Well,
buddy.
I feel like we're looking at like the Federation will get word of this, and they're like, "Wait, Cisco, you're joking, right?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's like you killed their pope. And then like,
You
but she
poped.
came back to, she came back alive, and then she's stuck on this planet in the Gamma Quadrant. It's like, yes, sir. It's like, what have you done? The Bedro would never join the Federation now. But
Miss
I guess like
Cisco.
like when I say there's consequences should be I'm not saying there's no consequences and there's pretty severe ones, but let's be fair here. There should be like the literally like it should be like there's a conversation like next episode where Bedro's like, yeah, so leave. Uh there's the door, points to like the edge of their solar system that they're in. Leave. Leave. We don't want you here
So
anymore.
no, no, the issue is because it's a provisional government. There's probably like not enough.
Oh no, a
No one
hundred,
can make.
100%. Like, but I
Plus,
guess like what
this
I want
is
is like,
the emissary. This is the Cisco. Like,
sir,
he gets one. He
uh,
gets one dead Kai.
G- Jesus came back and killed the Pope, sir. It's like, how do we feel about this? I don't know. This Jesus guy,
I
I'm not
just
100%
realized
behind him.
with the joke I just said, like he gets one dead Kai. Literally, you remember how the series ends? That's why it has to go that way. It's like I'm not dealing with the fallout. GG, no re, goodbye.
Within 7 years, this happens twice. Uh,
Yeah,
oh God, that feels like a meme now, where it's like, you know, if I had a nickel for every dead Kai that Cisco like indirectly or directly results in, I'd have two nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice.
really. Well, no, it's not even. Well, so this one's his fault for sure. The other one technically isn't his fault,
Oh
but
no, it's
damn,
not his fault. But
will
let's be
it be
fair. When
perceived
anyone,
as his fault?
I don't know. It's one of those situations where like people would hear Cisco as president, and people would be like, "Oh, so is he at fault again?" They're like, no, 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 he wasn't at fault this time. It's like, well, like, are we sure? Were
Was
there
he at fault
cameras?
for this one?
Were there cameras? No, no, no. But like, everyone said it's fine. I'm like, It'd be like
I
again,
don't
Kira
believe
comes. Here's
you.
the thing. Kira comes back with Cisco and tells everybody, everyone of Bajor, the Kai is now stuck on this planet and she's not coming back. She's helping other people and she says we need to move on. And someone else is saying, prove it.
Fuck that!
And she's
Bring
like,
her back!
it's like what do you mean? It's like, yeah, prove it. Like you just said she went through the wormhole and she's not coming back. And she said, and you're telling me she said she's fine with it. Yeah. I'm just gonna go grab a ship and we're gonna go
Sounds
investigate
like
that
a
planet.
religious coup right here, a political coup. You got some proof of this? Got some proof that this isn't a coup?
But yeah, I mean, overall, plot elements of this episode are not phenomenal. They're interesting and they
Oh
do have.
my God, I just realized, there's almost certainly someone who will say, like some Dale Gribble motherfucker who will say, nah, 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 she was already banging Belial, and this was her way to try and get Belial into the position of Kai. She was setting that up as a long game. You
Oh please,
absolutely,
you think that's a Dale Gribble level? No, no, no. I was thinking you were going more along
yes.
the lines of like, you think the Kai died on that planet? Joke's on you. She's been dead for years. She's been piloted by a tiny remote control thing controlled by Gul Dukat. He sent her through the wormhole so that she wouldn't come back. Like he would have some crazy. Oh God, a Dale Gribble in the Star Trek universe with the technology they have would be. He would die from having to overprocess all the possibilities.
Oh, it would be great. We need, listen,
Oh,
listen,
the
listen.
Federation take
Someone call
over.
up.
No, the Federation take over, and within a week, we have an emissary. The wormhole opens. The prophets are in there. Sure.
Listen, listen. There's a King of the Hill like revival coming out. Everyone, I need you to like just mail like send fan mail to Mike Judge and just say you need a Star Trek parody of Dale Gribble just talking about DS9 stuff. I'm like, sure, 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 sure,
Yes, all all
sure. This
um all three people who regularly watch this. One of whom is probably my mom. Yes, go write these people. It'll definitely convince them.
Okay, listen, let's be fair. Does your mom actually watch it, or does she just
No,
be like, yeah, yeah,
she
exactly,
watches it. She doesn't
exact.
understand it though. She's just supporting me.
See, this is why I'm like me. It's like, yeah, my mom supports me, but she does not pretend to understand. Like, she understands the video game side of it because she herself likes video games, but Star Trek, it's like, no. Now, on the other hand, if we start watching Babylon 5 on here, she would get it. She would get that.
Ooh, yes,
We're friends, actually.
something equally as relevant as DS9 to talk about on YouTube.
Actually, no. If we talked about Friends, she would also get that because I brought up like
How is
you
that?
you
How
were
is that
making me
any more relevant? Oh my god! Like the only things we want to talk about are things that were like from 20 years ago.
20. No, Hollywood's 30.
No, I know. No, I know that.
30.
I'm talking about like at most 20 years ago, or like at least 20 years ago. Is basically it's
No,
like
we could talk about the Orville. There's some good episodes of the Orville.
true.
And
But I just mean like the things that we've talked about, like discussing, where it's like, oh yeah, let's discuss this, and it's like, huh, that's It's pretty old. Like I jokingly talked about like I guess we're kind of moving past the episode, but generally before we get into the wind down here, I guess good episode, good character stuff. Definitely could be better. More or less, I liked it, and it's definitely not skippable. So B minus at most, or B minus
B
at
for
least. At
me.
least, yeah.
B for me.
But
It's a good, solid episode. Also, actually, another one since you brought up like it's like, hey, recently, if you make me talk about video games at some point, I will make a episode like talking about so there's some issues with like Kaiserreich's historiography and like how it presents ideology and such. Yeah, we
wait,
need to
hold on. Say
talk
that
about
again.
this. Oh, so I've been getting back into Hearts of Iron 4, and in his base
Oh,
game,
okay.
yeah, it only has like four like sort of factions in terms of like ideology of democratic, communist, fascist, and neutral, and it kind of just in a lot of ways lumps them all together, or if there's something that doesn't fit anything, it just goes neutral. And it's one of those things of just like, yeah, so there's some problems here in terms of historiography and also like how things will come off. Because you know me, Hollux. I am someone who like pretty much focuses on modern history, kind of like interwar period. The whole it kind of treats it as, oh, it was kind of inevitable. Like some of this, even with the focus trees, which offers some options, it's like it doesn't real it's very broad strokes and not a lot of depth in terms of politics. Which, hey, guess what? There's something that does fix that for Horror 4. If you all haven't played it, play Kaiserreich. It's great. It's very good alternate history, and it gets into a lot of like of the politics of like their universe. Like, go play that. Anyways,
You
sorry.
know, that's an interesting diatribe. But one thing I was thinking, if we want to cover something a little bit more relevant that's still Star Trek, we could cover Lower Decks. It's coming out sometime this year, supposedly.
Oh, a new season or
Yeah,
the new
season four
uh
says mid 2023. Although I don't know at that point if that's committed to or they're gonna have to move it back again. But yeah, I mean we could comment on
the
that.
main
That's
thing. Yeah, and plus there's that new Star Trek game that was just recently announced, and they're going to have the full trailer released on the 16th. We could talk about that, and you as the
yeah.
person who plays Solaris, and then me as just like, oh, me as the person who's been putting up with the horseshit of Victoria 3 and Imperator, basically the non-sci-fi stuff of them. It's like, yeah, we could give our thoughts, and I can give you my doubts of it being good. Like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be a Vicky 3 situation, isn't it?
I also wanted to. What was the other thing that was like really old that I wanted to talk about? It was I wanted to talk about like the '93's Little Mermaid. Uh, Also because I had read the book recently, so I was like, hey, we could talk about that. That's somewhat relatively culturally relevant right now because of the live action Little Mermaid that came out.
If you want, if you want to
No,
do
no, no,
it,
no, no, no,
well,
no.
as I said,
It's
it's either that or Mulan, and I'm better off. Like, I'm better with Mulan because it's like, oh, I actually like Mulan the original.
no, that's fair, and it's like I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge Little Mermaid fan either. It was literally just like I was trying to think of like we need to talk about stuff that's more relevant. But either way, um, I mean, more or less, we're done. I don't think I have anything else I want to say about the episode. Yeah.
You're gonna cut me off. Don't even bother asking me. Go ahead and end it.
Okay.
You
Okay.
already did, didn't you?
No, I haven't done it